the reason we wanted to start our Patriot Forums with you, we thought about a lot of different opportunities, and your staff and the publicists were terrific to work with us, is that this is a modern Profiles in Courage. We consider Breitbart the spirit of Andrew Breitbart, and Andrew spent so much time in Wisconsin, but we consider this ourselves the Fight Club. And the one thing we continue to discuss on the site and every day is the difference between talking about something and doing it, this concept of reform. And you understood at that time because you had the other side was cratering and starting to get the messaging different. But when your wife turned there, you realized that if we want reform, we have to take it to the bitter end.
Yep.
And I haven't, and my wingman doesn't understand it. How do the rest of the people in Wisconsin understand
Well, absolutely. And what I understood then was not that I was going to back down, but that I needed to hunker down and do a better job of not only pushing through the reforms, but explaining them. And the irony of all ironies, this is the part I mentioned in the book as well, that's kind of funny now at the time, but originally I'd wanted to do this. I thought we'd get it done in about a week to 10 days. We had a plan to make it happen. Had those 14 state Senate Democrats not left the state, it would have happened in that amount of time. And it would have been the law, and it would have gone into effect, and we wouldn't have had all the protests. The irony was my reason for wanting to do it so quickly was I didn't want to make a big spectacle about public employees, because most public employees are good, decent, honorable people. There are some examples of abuse, but I thought I'm not going to lead with that because I didn't want people to mistakenly think I was attacking all of them. The ironies, of course, is that just the opposite happened. But in many ways, if I'd start out by saying, tell the story of Megan Sampson I mentioned in the book, who was the outstanding teacher of the year, who years before I was governor was made the outstanding teacher of the year for the entire state of Wisconsin, a teacher in Milwaukee, one of those urban districts, and then a week or two later got told she was being laid off. Why? Because the old collective bargaining system said last hired is first fired.
Last in, first out.
Yeah.
Right.
People would have said, Governor, you need to fix it. If I would have told the story of the bus driver, the city bus driver in Madison who was making more than $150,000, more than the mayor, more than anybody else.
Highest paid guy in the state, right?
Yeah. And people would have said, oh, my gosh, you got to fix it. If I would have told about the correctional officers who, under the old union contracts, could call in sick on their first shift and then come back and work the next shift and double overtime, people would have said, fix it. But I was so focused on fixing it, I didn't bother explaining it.
But you had not. Okay, let's go back. Let's flash back. You were. It wasn't like you came to this unprepared.
Right.
You had seen this as the chief executive, really, of Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And what you had seen is governors who would, at the last second, dump down budget cuts, et cetera, that the cities and people had to deal with. So tell us about your experience in Milwaukee. That was a formative experience before you ran.
That's right. I was a Milwaukee County executive. They did it to me at the county. They did it. In fact, the reason that Megan Sampson was laid off was because Jim Doyle, a Democrat, and the Democrats in the legislature had cut money from public schools as well as local governments before and just didn't give everybody the tools. For me, though, the most passion, I spend a whole chapter talking about this. And this is not a biography. If you want to know my biography, go on my website.
It's an amazing thing. You don't say anything about it. By the way, it's a Brad Thor is a buddy of ours in the site. It's like written by Brad Thor. Mark Deason was your co-author in this, and we know Mark well, but this is by far the best thriller he's ever. It's like a thriller.
Well,
this book you can't put down because there's two things: is whether we know the outcome, but it's how you go through it in the intense pressure we're going to talk about. But it's also your family, this small unit, because it's not just a guy that's a professional politician as a governor. It's also a father, a mother, and two little boys, and what they have to go through with all this vitriol, all this hatred thrown at them.
Well, that's exactly right. And that's what we wanted to tell. We thought people knew. They saw the images of the protesters. They heard about the recall, but people didn't know all the details of what happened. And not only that, but why, which goes to the point about your question about Milwaukee County. When I was a county executive for 8 years, I was elected to that position. First Republican ever, was elected there 3 times. And
an overwhelmingly Democratic
right. In
area.
fact, the last year I was elected with 60% of the vote, nearly 60% of the vote in a county that went.
Why was that?
2/3 for Obama.
Why do you?
Because they want leadership. I said in times of crisis, what I think voters want more than anything isn't just Republican or Democrat leadership. They want leadership, and we stepped up and we took on the insanity that was going on in that county. But what I learned firsthand was when I would try it, I inherited a huge pension scandal. That's why my predecessor left office, resigned at the last minute.
This is where he was going to get like a $2 or $3 million payoff.
Yeah, he'd come in, and ironically, he was facing a recall, and I said I would challenge him, and then he resigned about a week, 10 days later. So I inherited this big mess, all sorts of challenges out there. To balance all the problems we had from the higher pension cost, I thought, okay, we're going to do simple things like adjust pension, healthcare costs, even things as simple as a 35-hour work week. And repeatedly, the public employee union bosses would say no. They basically said, just go ahead and do it. lay the people off, because their sense was, you'll be gone in a couple of years. We'll elect somebody new who will be on our side. We won't give up our benefits, and we'll get our employees back. But in the meantime, they didn't care about that new young employee.
The last in, first out was, hey, tough break for a swell guy.
Exactly. And I'd have workers come in tears when our only alternative left was to do layoffs, and they'd offer to help out their coworkers, and I'd tell them, go talk to your union leaders, because they're the ones that are making the call here. So I knew when I came in, we were going to fix that corrupt system.